Today I'm going to be talking about the M word, and the M word is masculinity. Being cool, calm, and collected and stoic when under stress is a trait that we typically associate with masculinity. If we look at this combination of increasing dopamine and increasing GABA together, but not increasing them for no reason, just bringing them into alignment with where they should be, this ultimately creates a scenario where... Okay, everyone, welcome back to my solo rants podcast solo sword series thing at Victory Men's Health. If you are in the US and you are looking for someone to oversee your TRT and do it properly, do it the ways that I have been speaking about now for many years and trying to teach and impart to as many people as possible, please check out Victory Men's Health. They are the best. They are the only clinic in the US that I'm willing to put my name on and give that level of endorsement to. So please check them out if you have not already. Today, I am going to talk about my favorite topic, which is the cross-section of behavioral psychology, neuropsychiatry, and endocrinology. Now, these are a bunch of big words. So this means behavior, what you do and why you do it. It means how your brain works and how hormones influence those two things, which, in my opinion, a lot of people are looking for more information. And the thing that got me into this field, as opposed to many others in the field who came in from a bodybuilding or sports perspective, I actually came over from neuropsychiatry. I was doing a master's in neuropsychiatry, which is the science of psychiatry. And I very quickly became disenfranchised and a bit jaded towards the industry with a number of practices that I'm not going to really get too into, but I deemed that the treatment standards, as well as some of the research, was not really addressing the root cause of what a lot of people were seeking to resolve. And the thing that got me into testosterone therapy was looking at how it works when comparing it to other modalities of treating mental health disorders. And I'm not talking about severe mental health disorders. I'm talking about things like low-grade depression, anxiety, issues with attention, issues with sleep, and issues with self-confidence. So today I'm going to be talking about the M word, and the M word is masculinity. And I've done a number of speeches and presentations on this, and what I'm going to be talking about today is a bit of a condensed 101 style version of my first lecture in the Your Brain on Testosterone and the War of Masculinity lecture series, where I talk about how testosterone impacts the brain and behavior. So when men are looking to go onto testosterone therapy, one of the most common things that they are looking to achieve, whether they recognize it consciously or whether it's a subconscious thing, is to improve their sense of masculinity or to be more manly. And I think it's good to address this in terms of saying, well, what does this actually mean? Because this is a very subjective and maybe not esoteric term, but it's a non-scientific term for something that a lot of people are looking for support with in one shape or another. And I think the good question to ask is, does TRT make you more masculine or does it make you more manly? And unfortunately, it's not a short answer. It's kind of one of those yes with an if, no with a but kind of scenarios. So I'm going to try to not let this get too long in the teeth, but I do want to talk about some of the pathways in which testosterone impacts how you feel, impacts how you think, and ultimately impacts who you are. So one of the things that I think everyone who is going down this rabbit hole is also looking to achieve is to improve their subjective quality of being alive. This is what we're all trying to achieve in one way, shape, or form if we are looking at various aspects of self-development, whether it's with health or behavior or whatever you're doing with your life. Ultimately, we're looking to have a better time on this earth and hopefully not make it shorter in the process. So optimizing bioidentical hormones, and in men particularly testosterone, which is the primary sex hormone and without sounding too esoteric is a man's life force, does have a very profound impact in these pathways. And I have found that when we're looking at it from an interventional standpoint to improve mental health, it does have some advantages, both in terms of outcomes and mechanistic theory, over a lot of the traditional approaches with which, if we're going to be honest, don't really work for a lot of people and cause a lot of people a lot of problems. A lot of people have already been down that road, or they know people who have, and they can agree from experience. But again, there are outliers. There are absolutely people who do well from psychiatric medications. This is not to discourage or discredit these people. But testosterone is very interesting in terms of how it impacts a lot of pathways in the brain. And when we're looking at these low-grade mental health issues that people are experiencing, a lot of them involve some degree of stress. Now, stress is a very broad, overarching term. I like to define stress as not having enough X to do Y. So not having enough money to pay the bills, not being smart enough to answer the question, not being fit enough to get through the workout, not having enough time to do all the things on your to-do list. It goes on and on and on. But stress is when an organism doesn't have what it needs to do the thing that it needs to do. And when we look at the human system, which is a consciousness which inhabits a physical vessel, when the physical vessel is sick, a lot of these energetic pathways become stressed, and then there are downstream consequences of this. I hope I haven't lost people. So, when we look at what testosterone does, and when we look at what hormones do, hormones act kind of like marionettes for a lot of systems, kind of like puppet masters. So there are a lot of downstream things that are impacted by hormones. And conversely, a lot of the things downstream from this will then feed back in terms of hormone production. The body is a series of interconnected systems. But if there is an intractable, meaning unfixable, issue causing low testosterone levels, then this effect is going to be felt downstream both in the short term and long term, and lead to a lot of negative consequences, not just in health, but quality of life. So when we look at what testosterone does in the body, it has a lot of opposing effects towards cortisol and stress. It also upregulates endogenous opioid receptors and production, and it improves insulin sensitivity. Insulin sensitivity is very important to look at because insulin sensitivity effectively drives how well your body utilizes glucose as a fuel source. And my friend Dr. Keith Nichols has been advocating for a while that TRT, when done properly, should be considered a frontline treatment for insulin resistance. And I'm in very strong agreement with this because insulin resistance over time causes a lot of health problems. In fact, it is involved in all the primary diseases of aging, which are heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and cognitive decline or dementia. So if we can improve the body's ability to optimize energy production, if we can reduce the body's propensity for stored body fat from energy, and we can also buffer a lot of the biological effects of stress at a receptor level or from a secretion level when the pituitary signals the adrenal glands to produce stress hormones, we already set the body up in a much better biological environment just to be a human and do human stuff. But I'm also very interested in what testosterone does in the brain. So when we look at testosterone, we look at two properties that it has, and all androgens share this. It is anabolic and it is androgenic. Anabolic meaning building tissue, androgenic meaning masculinizing properties. So both of these are very important. Building muscle tissue is important for health. Muscle, as Dr. Gabrielle Lyon says, is the organ of longevity, which is very true. Muscle is like a sponge for blood glucose. Muscle is important for protecting your bones. Muscle is important for doing the stuff in life that we need to do as humans. So physical capacity is extremely important for a lot of things, as well as your confidence. But if we look at what it does from an androgenic standpoint, this is where it gets very interesting because not only are we looking at the effects of testosterone in the brain, but we're also looking at the effects of DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, which is the more androgenic metabolite of testosterone, as well as its various metabolites. And when we look at how this impacts neurotransmitters, it's quite different to how psychiatric medications work. So when we're looking at psychiatric medications that modulate, let's say, the dopamine pathway, we're typically looking at things like reuptake inhibitors, such as methylphenidate. We're looking at things like releasing agents, which is amphetamine, which is also combined as a reuptake inhibitor as well. Or we're looking at agonists or partial agonists at certain dopamine receptor or subreceptor types, such as cabergoline or pramipexole, for example. Now, what testosterone does differently is that it brings neurotransmission into balance across the board. So not only does it upregulate the expression of the enzymes which convert amino acids into dopamine, but it also increases dopamine transmission. Now, this just doesn't mean more dopamine from staring at a wall and doing nothing and feeling euphoric from sitting on your ass. This means that the brain is capable of making more dopamine in response to stimulus. So this conditions better behavior and reward pathways, because now when you do the things that you're supposed to do that feel good, it actually gives your brain more of a neurological reward, which cements these pathways. Now, You could also argue that this could drive people down, dark roads of hedonism and addiction, for sure. But this is a choice because people are also sentient. So it does come down to discipline and choosing to do the things that you know you need to do, not choosing the things you just want to do and expecting to have great outcomes. That's called entitlement. The world doesn't work like that. But the other thing that's interesting, particularly when we look at DHT and its metabolites, is the positive allosteric modulation of the GABA A receptor. Now, in layman's terms, this means turning up the receptor sensitivity. So it means that you become more sensitive to the GABA as well as the other molecules such as glycine or magnesium, which modulate the GABA receptors, creating a more cool, calm, and collected mindset, but also reducing excitotoxicity and neural inflammation. This means it protects your brain from being overstimulated and preventing the monkey mind from being too chaotic for no reason. So if we look at this combination of increasing dopamine and increasing GABA together, but not increasing them for no reason, just bringing them into alignment with where they should be, this ultimately creates a scenario where someone is rewarded and someone is insulated against the stress of pushing outside their comfort zone. So this can not only drive risk-taking behavior when there is a poor behavioral outcome, but it also can drive the most important thing for masculinity, which is the capacity for leadership. So being cool, calm, and collected and stoic when under stress is a trait that we typically associate with masculinity. And this is something that I think everyone should strive to develop. But when it comes back to how does testosterone really work to produce this, it doesn't give it to you for free. Because what it's doing is it's making these pathways work the way that they're supposed to, but it isn't pumping neurotransmitters through them for no good reason. It's simply bringing the pathways into alignment with the way that the brain is supposed to work, meaning that it makes you feel the way that you're supposed to feel. It doesn't alter your consciousness, it's not intoxicating, it doesn't make you turn into some Giga Chad ultra confident mindset when you have no capacity or confidence in who you are. It makes you feel the way that you're supposed to feel. The problem with hypogonadism is that because stress signals are amplified and dopaminergic tone is reduced, it means that difficult things feel a lot harder than they should, and the reward for pushing outside the comfort zone isn't so fun. Everything just feels very difficult, and it tends to drive avoidant behavior. The problem is that being the outcome of someone who's been driven towards avoidant behavior over time tends to lead to a scenario when someone doesn't have the confidence and capacity in themselves to be the person that they want to be. So what this means, to bring this all together, is that testosterone replacement therapy gives you the foundation to develop masculinity. It gives you the foundation to be someone who you respect. It gives you the foundation to work on these things and get the reward that you deserve so that your inputs and your outputs are in alignment. So it's very important if someone is starting testosterone replacement therapy that they start to take a look at their habits and their behaviors, their routines, and what they engage with over a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and start to work on developing confidence by overcoming fears, by pushing outside the comfort zone, and by engaging in routines and behaviors that you know would have delivered the outcome that you hope to achieve had you had these optimal testosterone levels in the first place. This is difficult because you're breaking maladaptive coping mechanisms and you're breaking ingrained behaviors, but you have to recognize that these things no longer serve you. But most importantly, the testosterone is not going to drive you to do that forever. You may get a little bit of a rush when you start. You may find that you're more inclined or more open towards these behaviors, but it's not going to be something that's going to physically pull you out of bed at 6 a.m. to go to the gym before work. It's not going to be the thing that makes you put the fork down or order the meal that you should be ordering rather than the burger and the fries because you have goals that you're wanting to achieve and you're wanting to flood your body with healthy, good quality nutrition. It's not going to do that for you, but if you do put the work and the effort in, it's going to make those things work the way that it should because the body is less stressed, more anabolic, and the mental processes that you have as a foundation are more driven towards the area and the mindset that you ultimately want to achieve. So if you are looking to improve your mental health, if you are looking to improve your capacity as a male, if you're looking to optimize your experience of life, ultimately you need to have healthy testosterone levels. And what we would ideally like to see, especially in younger men, is for these levels to be achieved naturally. This is the ultimate win-win situation, is to get the benefits of TRT without needing to go on TRT. And it's so important that people always address this first, because making a lifelong medical intervention that you don't need is a bad strategy, especially if you can get the same outcome without doing it. There's a lot of reasons for that I don't need to explain. But the other thing that's important is that if you don't rectify something that's suppressing your testosterone production and you use it anyway, you're going to get side effects, because you're now working against the body, not with the body. There's very different scenarios if a young man is practicing poor diet and lifestyle behaviors and has his testosterone suppressed via secondary pathways as a result, versus a man in his 50s or 60s who's got age-related decline due to a failure of functioning of the testicles to produce testosterone in response to signals from the pituitary. These are very different things. However, a lot of practitioners treat this in the same way. So if you are in the US and you're listening to this podcast, you can work with Victory Men's Health on this. I have worked with them extensively on understanding this exact philosophy. But most importantly, practitioners must understand that testosterone is not going to do the work for you. It is not going to overcome or override the poor diet and lifestyle behaviors. But ultimately, people also have to work and meet the medicine halfway to get the effects they're hoping to achieve from a psychological, from a mood, from a confidence standpoint. It's about going through these processes and behaviors and routines that ultimately build confidence. But now the testosterone is there to support the body in the way that it should have always felt, so that you can get the results you deserve. So I hope that helped, and I'll see you all on the next one. What is testosterone optimization therapy? This is optimizing testosterone levels rather than simply just replacing them. The provider will need to intrinsically understand how testosterone works and how the human body works. So when you follow this process of optimizing testosterone gradually, it allows the patient to acclimatize